Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to this important conversation around our commitments of moving beyond signing into action to make the word become flesh in the work that we do. My name is David Vasquez Levy. I serve as chair of the board of Church World Service, an organization that many of us are deeply committed to. That is an expression of the work of what the church can do when it comes together. CWS is over 75 years old, and it is one of the expressions of how the world came together after the devastation of World War II to indicate that we could create a better world, and we could do so by working across the difference of our religious traditions or our ecumenical commitments. And so we gather here together as Church World Service, and those of you who are part of our covenant members, who are part of our outreach through offices all over this country, through the work that we do to bring word into action. Thank you for joining us today. We gather today specifically to invite us to continue to think about how we take action around the Ash Wednesday Ecumenical Declaration, Defending Refuge. This is an ecumenical statement that over 3,500 people have signed onto that express a commitment that in this time of crisis, in this unprecedented time of conflict, and also a dangerous moment for many of the most vulnerable people who are on the move, that we come together to break silence and to speak. The first time that we created an ecumenical declaration was in 2018, when we found ourselves in a similar moment in the history of our nation, and now globally as well, in the rise of xenophobia and fear of those who are strangers or who are from other communities. And so this declaration builds on that legacy. We launched it on Ash Wednesday, a day when many of our Christian communities take to the scriptures and remind us that, as we say, remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. These words, as they are spoken around the church and around the world, remind us of our common humanity and how urgent it is that we come together to remember that we are all created in the image of God, that we must seek ways to defend one another and our well-being. Today, the global Catholic Church celebrates the election of a new Pope. Pope Leo XIV has been elected, and part of the rejoicing of many in our communities that are part of our faith communities, express joy at the fact that someone who is also committed both to the poor and to me has invited us to be able to celebrate together. So thank you for gathering together as we come together. And we want to invite you, as we reflect together, listen to others who are working in this remarkable work together, to do three things. To sign the petition, if you have not had a chance to do that, we will be providing you the information of how to do that. To ask others to also sign on. It is important at this moment that we stand together. This declaration represents the importance of being able to speak as one voice, but then to move beyond the signature, to be able to truly take action, to advocate for the well-being and welcome and the protection of refuge, to donate to the support of Church World Service as we seek to do our work. It is critical that our faith community support this work. As government steps back from the responsibility of caring for one another and those displaced, it is critically important that we step up and that we provide that necessary support. Today's session is designed to equip and inspire us as we approach this work that is so critical of the welcome of those who are seeking refuge. We have a great group of folks together with us that are going to be sharing their reflections on our work together. And I'm going to begin by inviting Danilo Zach, who is the Director of Policy for Church World Service. Thank you, Danilo, for being with us. I get notifications on a regular basis from Danilo, who's given us these updates on where are we at in this work. There is such a myriad of things happening all at once. And what I appreciate is that work that you and your team are doing to help us track on all of the efforts that we are doing to protect refuge. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate it. It's so important to be joining in this space together and to be staying updated. And of course, it's been a very difficult thing with so many twists and turns, so many new policies changing on seemingly a day by day basis. And so it's my hope just to spend the next little bit of time providing the current state of play when it comes to some of the major policies that have been impacting refugees and newcomers in our communities. And it really remains the case that some of the humanitarian pathways and programs that have protected refugees and newcomers for so many decades are under unprecedented threat. And also want to talk a little bit about taking action after I share the policy update. But I'll start with the Refugee Resettlement Program, which of course was enshrined into law in 1980 by the Refugee Act. It's been a part of Church World Services work for much longer than that. It really began following World War II. And there really have been so many twists and turns, even over the last couple months. As of this morning, though, the fact remains that the refugee program is indefinitely banned by the Trump administration. The funding freeze the administration put in place is largely still in place today, at least as far as reimbursements for new programs and new support to those who have been resettled here. Tens of thousands of refugees have been stranded overseas, including many who were already approved and have already gone through the lengthy years-long security vetting and screening processes that individuals go through in order to be resettled. They are stuck overseas, sometimes in refugee camps, sometimes in other areas, in increasingly dangerous conditions, particularly given we have no longer fulfilled our commitments to overseas humanitarian aid as well, that also supports these populations. Among those stranded is Pasito, a refugee from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who was approved for resettlement and scheduled for travel with his wife and young child. They'd sold all the family's possessions. They'd given up their home in preparation for resettlement. They had a flight booked to the US, but that flight was abruptly canceled by the refugee ban. Pasito is the lead plaintiff in a case that Church World Service has filed against the administration, aiming to block the refugee ban and resume refugee resettlement. And there's been a lot of movement in that case. We've seen a lot of success in that case, even in the last couple of weeks, as arguments continue. And these cases can take a long, long time. But while the case proceeds, the Ninth Circuit has required the administration to process, resettle, and provide support to the 12,000 refugees, approximately, who had flights booked to the US, like Pasito did, who had completed all their necessary processing and yet have been stranded by this refugee ban. So while this case continues, the Ninth Circuit has said these 12,000 refugees must be processed and resettled. The district court now, the lower court in the case, this week has issued a compliance framework outlining the specific steps the administration needs to take to resettle those individuals, and they have a week-by-week requirements. And this is surely a hopeful sign, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to begin welcoming these individuals, although we have seen the administration repeatedly attempt to avoid its obligations. And certainly we saw, even after the compliance framework this week, the administration attempt to get a further clarification from the Ninth Circuit such that it may not have to resettle these individuals. While that clarification is being sought, however, the compliance framework remains in place. And that means the administration must resume overseas processing of these protected refugees by Monday, May 12th. It must reopen the resettlement support centers that process refugees by Monday, May 12th. It must develop a plan for redoing screenings that may have expired for those who have been approved. And there's a series of other requirements, including the restoration of services to those who have already arrived, that come on a week-by-week basis, according to the report. So I'm watching this case very closely and very hopeful to see the administration finally abide by these court orders that have been very strong in the Pasito case, and begin to resume refugee resettlement, at least for this group of refugees who had travel booked to the US when the ban went into place. I also want to just comment a little bit on some other populations who are very vulnerable in this moment, especially those who arrived under humanitarian parole and temporary protected status. It is the case that under the last administration, a large number of people were brought here on these sort of temporary statuses, protected by TPS, or brought here like Ukrainians who came through for fleeing the Russian invasion through the Uniting for Ukraine program. That's a humanitarian parole program offering only temporary protections. Afghans who were evacuated following the fall of Kabul were brought here under humanitarian parole, only a temporary protection. Individuals coming from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela through the CHNV parole program. Again, just a temporary parole program. And so that's left many people in this sort of limbo-like status where they're here lawfully, they're often working here lawfully, they're seeking other pathways to permanent status, like applying for asylum, but they're here with these temporary protections. Unlike refugees, they don't have a clear path to permanence. And that means they're subject to some of the attacks and restrictions of the current Trump administration. So we've seen efforts to revoke parole protections en masse for the CHNV population, for example, threats of that happening to Ukrainians as well. We've seen efforts to terminate TPS, temporary protected status, for Afghans who have arrived and for others. As of right now, there has been litigation on a number of these cases. For example, the effort to revoke parole protections for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Those efforts have been blocked by not just a district court, but a circuit court. And also some of the efforts to terminate TPS have also been litigated. And just yesterday, actually, there was a case filed by CASA seeking to prevent the termination of temporary protected status for Afghans and Cameroonians. But remains the case that many of these people are in need of our support and certainly ongoing advocacy as well. Finally, I should note that there has been a dramatic increase in ICE enforcement actions, as many of you may be aware in your own communities. The Trump administration has escalated these enforcement activities all over the country. It's requested massive increases in funding for these enforcement activities, including detentions and deportations. It's many times avoided due process in order to attempt to deport individuals. One thing that at Church World Service we've been tracking very closely is enforcement actions in places of worship that have historically been known as protected areas alongside schools and hospitals and courthouses. And there is, yet again, litigation ongoing that seeks to challenge those enforcement actions. But as of right now, we have been seeing actions take place in spaces of worship and elsewhere, and incredibly important for individuals to know their rights and to be prepared for these enforcement actions as they're coming. And I do want to talk quickly about the best ways to take action. Reverend Dr. David shared some of them just before, but it's really important to note that making change in this moment, of course, it's about litigation. It's about bringing the fight to the administration and the courts, and we're doing that, as you've heard. But it's not just about that. We won't see really sustainable change in our country's approach to welcome, in our support for our refugee and immigrant neighbors, unless we raise our voices and we make our voices heard. And we really need to reach out to our elected leaders and meet with them and encourage them to use their voices in support of these folks and stand with refugees and newcomers. And it might be easier than you think to reach out and meet with your member of Congress or their staff, and maybe send an email, maybe schedule a meeting when they're home in the district, maybe attend a town hall. And there's lots of ways to do that. And I encourage folks to view some of the materials that we'll share after and during this presentation that will allow you to do that easily. And also to think about some of these key moments to stand with our refugee and immigrant neighbors, like World Refugee Day. And we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. But that's coming up real soon on June 20th. And there's lots of tools to take action during World Refugee Day as well. Maybe holding a vigil or a potluck or some pickup soccer with refugees and immigrants in your communities, just ensuring that we're standing together in the face of what has really been a series of really concerning policy changes from the administration. But with that, I'm pretty much at my time. So I will turn it over to David or whoever is the next speaker, and appreciate everybody again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anilo, for your work, for your leadership, and just an amazing, again, an invitation to everybody to sign up to receive the updates as they cut through all of the confusion of these things and provide. It's really critically important that we all be informed. And I am just shaken by those stories of individuals literally being taken off planes after they have spent years in a process. As many of you know, refugee processing can take decades. And just the absolute disheartening reality and the cruelty of being stopped mid-track. And so I'm just so deeply grateful for CWS trying to stand in that gap, trying to advocate and protect the rights and then the will of the people, really how we in the courts are trying to ensure that the will of the people and not just a few individuals are how we live out our lives as a nation. World Refugee Day is June 20th. And so we'll continue to provide some resources here for you to be able to start planning now to mark that day as a way that we break silence, we make it known that we stand for welcome, that we really do stand here to ensure that our nation continues to be a place of refuge. I want to take a moment then now to welcome among us somebody who knows from their first hand experience what it is, how critical it is to be able to be welcome when life has turned so difficult that you end up having to seek refuge. We are really blessed to have Wajdi Mohawak with us, who serves as Director of Finance Business Partners here at Church World Service. So welcome, Wajdi. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, David. I'm Wajdi Mohawak. I'm from Yemen. Maybe you know or you hear nowadays about Yemen from the breaking news. I left my country in 2016 because I was a state auditor and I was responsible for investigating one of the corruption cases, big corruption cases in Yemen. So I was just afraid about my life. So I left Yemen, and I left Yemen with my parents that time because I used them as a reason to leave Yemen. That I told them that I'm going just to Egypt to give my father a medical care in Egypt. In 2014, also my house was bombed by tanks in Yemen in the war of 2014, and they just told me that it was by mistake. When I arrived to Egypt with my parents, life was very hard. It's not allowed for refugees to work in Egypt. So no one will accept you to work, and how you can spend, for example, or live in a country that they didn't give you, for example, job or accept you to work in this country by laws. So there was an organization that called St. Andrews Refugee Services, which is a partner with CWS in Egypt. And this was funded also by US government through BRM program and through Department of State. I applied for this organization that time, and I was accepted. And then within 6 months, I become the director of finance for this organization. This organization is supporting and providing direct services for more than 30,000 refugees in Egypt. 7 years in Egypt as a refugee, or as asylum seeker, because actually it's not allowed for Yemenis to be granted a refugee in Egypt due to some political issues, for example, with some of the donors with the UNHCR. So I have been living for 7 years as asylum seeker, and then I was lucky, to be honest, I was to win, for example, the diversity visa and move to the United States. I moved to the United States. I moved to what it is called now sanctuary cities, which is Minneapolis in Minnesota. It was great to move here. It was easy. I was lucky also because of the support that I received from CWS once I arrived here, because I got a job the second day I arrived to the United States. So my life was easier. I felt safe here in the United States for the first half and the first year and a half. And then things start to become some difficult. I started to start a process for my parents to join me in the United States through one of the pathways, through a program that called Welcome Corps. We spent about 1 year and a half in the process of this program, through security vetting, through medical, for example, medical tests, and then finally they informed my parents that they are able to move to the United States, or they admitted to move to the United States, and their plane or their travel was scheduled in February 16. Then when the new administration just come to the power, they informed my parents that their flight is canceled. So after my parents just left their home, bought their, for example, furnitures, and they just stayed with my brother temporarily that time, and then they informed them, your flight is canceled and you will not be able just to go to United States, and we don't have any information. They said them, don't ask us, we don't have any information how that will be long, or for example what is coming. So it was very frustrated for us, for my parents. We prepared for receiving them because we are about 3 weeks just to receive them. I rent another place for them. My sister came from California to Minneapolis, or moved to Minneapolis just to live with my parents and support my parents. Then we started also to feel the fear here in the United States. My kids, when they are going to the school or going out, they have to carry out their green cards, which if they lose them, they are kids. If they lose them, it will be hard, for example, to get another one. And also, for example, we started to fear, to scare. If ICE can, for example, come to your house. I remember last week, one of our neighbors just came late at 3 a.m. and she started to knock their door, and my wife just was very scared that she said, what happens? Maybe they are the ICE. I told her, no, we are legal here. Nothing will happen. So we started to feel the fear here in the United States. The new administrations that impact my family, my parents, and ourselves as, for example, a new immigrants into the United States. So then when I saw, for example, that CWS that announced the Ash Wednesday Ecumenical Declaration, I signed that declaration because standing with the refugees is about defending our shared humanity, our faith, and the moral fabric of our nations. As we approach World Refugee Day, we cannot send a message that we turned our backs. Absolutely not. Jesus was a refugee as a child. So was Prophet Muhammad and Moses. Our faiths teach us to welcome the stranger, to protect the vulnerable, and to act with compassion. Welcoming refugees is not about charity, it's about justice. When we give people a fair chance, they flourish. It's our responsibility to create a level playing field where refugees can show their brilliance. That's not just good for them, it's a blessing for all of us. As Bible reminds us, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And I felt that when I arrived to the United States. I was a stranger and people of the United States welcomed me. Let this be the year we truly live these words with courage, with faith, and with actions.
Wow.
Thank you.
My goodness, YG, thank you for telling your compelling story. Our prayers are with you in this moment of fear for your family, as well as the very reality of this executive order sort of impacting you and those you care about. And the fact that you have then turned around to create Welcome Through CWS for many others is inspiring. And your story, like that of many other refugees, are what inspire CWS to make our way through this challenging time, because we know what courage it takes. And we learn that from one another. So thank you, thank you. We are delighted to also welcome into our conversation today Ken Spiker. Ken is the co-founder of Northern Virginia Friends of Refugees and represents the large network of organizations that are standing up to do this work. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm here to, I think, talk about what can happen at the local level when people want to get involved. I first got a compassion for the displaced people after the Haitian earthquake, and I went with my home church and the United Methodist response teams to do some of the follow-up work or mission work after the earthquake. And that connected me with other people. And here in Northern Virginia, where I am, we connected in 2016. We formed Nova Friends of Refugees. I'm a co-founder with a very good friend of mine, Wendy Chan. But we did this as a joint ministry of two churches here, Mount Olivet United Methodist and St. George's Episcopal. And I won't go into all the details, but at that time, we had some public forums to talk about the refugee issues, and at that time there was a lot of negative rhetoric during that election year about refugees. And after the public forums, we decided there was a lot of response. People turned out to hear, and we thought, how do we keep this going? And we basically created a listserv with a handful of people, maybe 10 or 20. And today that listserv is the core of Nova Friends of Refugees, and it's 1,650 people mostly in this area, some are in other states, some overseas. But we have, over this time, taken on a lot of efforts to support where we can. We tried very hard not to recreate what others are doing, like the resettlement agencies, but we became a hub for information sharing. And people now will post requests for families they know that need help, newcomers who have arrived, or people can donate things that they want. But it's also become an urgent response mechanism. I tell people we're the aid is a source of last resort. If the resettlement agencies or other NGOs that are doing this work can't help, we'll pitch in where we can. We are totally a free network, and we have a small budget, but we've helped people with rent or tuition payments. And right now, given the moving story we just heard, I'm getting a lot more requests. People hear about us and they'll call. Just last week, for the first time, a young woman from Egypt contacted me, and she's here. Her and her husband arrived in January from Egypt, and sad to say, he was a victim of torture, and now they've applied for asylum, and she was pregnant when they arrived. She had her baby about 2 weeks ago, but just 2 weeks before that happened, the baby was born, her husband was taken by ICE and is now detained in New Mexico. So we're connecting her with help as we can get it and do what we can. Wow. But that's the kind of things we do. That one's on my mind, so I brought it up. But
thank you, Ken, for just both that particular story of the impact that you are making with your organization, the motivation that brought you to this, and the way that even with limited resources, we can do so much, right, when we have this willingness to do that. So it's inspiring to see. And if we can all picture our ability, even on this call, if each of us take an action together, we can rebuild a network of welcome and of refuge for those who are in that need. So thank you, Ken, for being with us. I'd love to turn it over right now to one of our other CWS colleagues, Yathrib Abdel Gadir, who she serves as a community organizer in Greensboro, North Carolina for Church World Service, and can share with us just how to get involved, how this is happening right on the ground in our communities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, depending on where you are. And thank you for having me today. I'm really grateful to be here. And I just want to talk a little bit about what we're doing locally to prepare for World Refugee Day here in Greensboro, North Carolina. Our work at CWS is very much very collaborative, and everything that we do is in partnership with local agencies, community associations, community leaders, former refugees themselves, because we truly believe that the act of welcome is something that we practice on a very local level. And that begins with events like this. And so this year, one thing that we're doing is having two incredible former refugee speakers who will share their stories as part of our event. I'll be working closely with them to help prepare them and train them on a story of self-training and also helping them prepare using talking points from our communications team. It's really important, I think, that in a time like this, especially that we allow current and former refugee voices to lead. And it's really important that we not only create that space for them, but we also support and provide that support for them to be able to make that happen. Of course, for me, I think this work is very personal. And as someone who has worked alongside newly arrived communities for several years, I've really seen how powerful it is when people are invited to lead, which is why it's really important for us to be able to create these spaces and of support where individuals who have lived experiences where they're able to have the support to tell their stories. And this also means that we're able to then confront harmful narratives that oftentimes seek to portray refugees as threats. And so through storytelling, what we're able to do is then uplift their experiences. And we're also able to ensure that they're seen as integral parts of our local communities and that they belong. Some other things that we're having planned for our World Refugee Day celebration locally, we're continuing a very powerful tradition for the third year in a row of hosting a naturalization ceremony at the beginning of our event. And I think that this is truly a very symbolic of belonging on a day like this. And right after the ceremony, we'll be registering new citizens to vote because, of course, that is one of the most strongest and tangible ways for us to honor the dignity and the rights of refugees and immigrants in our community. And through that, we'll also be able to ensure that they have a voice in the civic process in the United States. And also, lastly, each year for World Refugee Day, we work with our local partners to secure proclamation from the governor of North Carolina, as well as the city of Greensboro. And these are, very public affirmations, and they give us an opportunity to be able to hold our elected officials accountable to the values of compassion, generosity, and welcome, as the Ecumenical Declaration asks. And I think that our work in Greensboro and across the entire CWS network, all of it is truly a reflection of what the Declaration asks for and calls for. And it shows what is possible, I think, when we work together in partnership across different faiths, across sectors, across lived experiences, to really build a community where welcome is something that is always practiced, not just something that is spoken about, and where every single individual is able to live a life with dignity, safety, and belonging. And I really just want to encourage everyone on here today to take action, whether it's reaching out to elected officials and urging them to stand with refugees and immigrants, or looking into how you can show up locally, whether it's by attending a World Refugee Day event in your area, or supporting any community-led efforts, or just simply showing up in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Athret, for your story, for your commitment, for your dedication and inspiration. And it is at that local level where our work needs to happen as we prepare for, just really making a big statement. So thank you for joining us. I'm brought to mind of Margaret Mead's quote: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And so that community organizing is so critical. And I want to invite my colleague, Mary Catherine Hines, who serves as the Senior Director of Fundraising Strategy here at CWS, to continue to also help us identify the ways we can contribute, be a part of this, and support the remarkable work of CWS. You are hearing directly from the voices of our network and and the folks who work at CWS, the folks who work at CWS. So thank you, Mary Catherine, for being with us. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. If your congregation signed the Ash Wednesday Ecumenical Declaration, you've already made a bold commitment to stand with refugees. So now I'd like to invite you to continue that commitment further, to make a visible, a tangible, and a transformative statement by joining our Journey for Justice campaign. It's a challenge that we're running from May 20th to June 20th. So World Refugee Day is June 20th. So it's a challenge for 1 month. And this 1 month experience is a simple, meaningful, and deeply faithful activity. And here's how it works. Congregants register on our website and commit to walking or running, if that's your thing, walking or running 43.7 miles over the course of that month. And that's representing the 43.7 million refugees that we have in our world today. And these steps are a physical act of solidarity with the long, difficult journeys that many refugees take to find safety. So during the month, as members of your congregation walk, they would then ask their friends and their family and others, especially those from outside of the church walls, to sponsor their journey. And this means that your congregation, if you do this, you can expand your impact and extend it beyond the walls of your congregation to and beyond your pews, raising vital funds through church will service can help refugees globally and here in our own communities. It isn't just about fundraising, though. I mean, that's a very important part, raising funds to help our refugee brothers and sisters, but it's also about formation. It's about prayer. It's about solidarity and educating your faith community and your church family. So each week, if you sign up each week during that time, that month, Church Will Service will provide devotionals and action alerts and creative ways to engage your congregation. Maybe like Yathri suggested, maybe you can we can help you connect with a refugee leader in your community to come speak in one of your services that month. We even provide a guide that can help you do a Refugee Sunday to celebrate the end of that month with worship tools and resources. So by participating, you're able to live out your faith, and by embodying hospitality and compassion, you can deepen discipleship through learning and reflection, and it extends your church's witness beyond the sanctuary and into the world. So we've made it easy to sign up, and I hope each of you will go online today and start a team for your congregation, and then we'll support you every step of the way with toolkits and personalized guidance. But to give you a sense of how meaningful this journey really can be, I'm excited to introduce Marcia Souls from Arlington Church of the Brethren, whose congregation is preparing to take on this challenge. And so Marcia agreed to come on and share why they decided and what they hope to get out of being a part of the Journey for Justice. Thank you, Marcia.
Hi. As I said, the Arlington Church was we were eager to do this. And the Arlington Church, although we're a small church, has been a church that, one of our mottos for our ministry team is helping our neighbors both here and afar. And we've always have had a, special focus on refugees and trying to help them to the extent we can. Back in the early 80s, we had sponsored a family, actually. And then since then, we've, tried to help in other ways by supporting Church World Service and some of their various programs as far as, contributing. But we also then helped a family that had been sponsored by the Lancaster Church of the Brethren when that family, after being in Lancaster for some years, decided to resettle in Northern Virginia. And we've been helping that family get adjusted by, helping with school supplies and some other items. But we've also, been especially concerned about the status of refugees at the present time. I'm also a legal advisor with the Church of the Brethren's Office of Peace Building and Policy in Washington, D.C. And in that role, I'm daily trying to keep up with, litigation, not only in the Pacito case, but in other immigration cases. And the Pacito case that was mentioned earlier, is especially something that has, we've mentioned and we've prayed for in our church, because it's, it's a family that was ready to come to the United States, had been cleared, and due to the halt of the processing was in cancellation of their tickets, they were unable to come. And then it's been especially hard because of the cutbacks and halting of the funding. And that's something that, some of us in our church have worked for the State Department and over the years, and so they know the importance of that funding and how, you know, it's critical to the resettlement, so that there's need for, as I think someone said, to step up to fill that goal. So we were excited that this, you know, Justice for, or Journey for Justice is going to be a way that we can sort of maybe help fill a gap, but at the same time showing solidarity with the refugees by walking 43.7 miles. And the Church of the Brethren has decided to do it by fulfilling that in two ways. First of all, the team members are going to each try to log their miles over this 30 or the month-long time to see if they can do, you know, walk 43.7 miles. But we've also decided to do it collectively, sort of in the solidarity. So on June 14th, we're going to be walking along a trail near our church. And each of us, I mean, some people may only walk 1 mile, some people may walk 3 miles, others may walk, you know, 6 miles, but we hope to, as a team, walk that 43.7 miles. And we think that, you know, that's another way to sort of not only, you know, do it as an individuals, but to help publicize the fact that the plight of it by doing it in a public park. So we're excited about that. And we just, after we chose June 14th, it's also the date that there's going to be that military parade here in DC. So we're sort of hoping that maybe, you know, it can be viewed as sort of the alternative. So we're excited about doing it. And as Mary Catherine spoke out, it's a way to not only raise funds from our community, but also, you know, spread the word to our friends, family across the United States to support this important project. So we're excited.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for the work that you are doing for the, you know, both on the legal front as well as on the very practical level, and blessings as you plan for that event as well. And we can already, I think, generate ideas among our listeners about the kinds of events that they can do. I hope that as you're listening to each of these testimonies, each of these ideas, each of these inspiring stories, that you're noting that these are voices from across the country, various ages, various racial and cultural backgrounds, levels of experiences. This work is really a reflection of the fact that as a nation, as a people, we really do want to continue to protect the refuge and well-being, and so your participation is critically important. We have a number of questions that have come into our chat, so appreciate those, and we're going to try to get to as many of those as we can. And to do that, I'm going to invite our colleague Danilo to come back on and share screen here with me as we try to make our way through the questions. And so the first question we have, Danilo, is: will the materials you are sharing explain how congregations can keep immigrants safe when they worship with us?
Absolutely. So first thing I'll say, and this will apply to, I think, a couple of the questions that come in, is that on this call, I can't offer specific legal guidance on any individual cases or for anybody, but there are good resources for folks to use who are thinking about ways that they can stand and support and protect individuals in their communities. I think one might have just been dropped into the chat. There's a resource that was supported by Churchwood Service Field Director Reverend Noel Anderson in his capacity with the United Church of Christ, that it looks like George just dropped into the comment section here. So encourage folks to check that out, provide some good resources for houses of worship trying to navigate this situation, especially given the rescission of the sensitive locations policy and the real possibility that enforcement actions may be taking place in houses of worship.
Yeah, so thank you. Does this mean that I think there was an earlier comment whether the RSC will be in Nairobi will reopen on Monday?
We hope so. I mean, I think that's part of the requirement for the administration based on this compliance framework that came about this past Monday. And they do have until Monday to do so. One of the important parts of the compliance framework is there's pretty rigorous reporting requirements for the administration. So if they do not do that, they'll have to say so in their reporting to the court. But yes, our hope is, based on the reporting requirements and this compliance framework that came out, that the resettlement support centers should be notified that they can resume operations, and they should be affirmatively afforded access to some of the databases that they've been cut off from. Because that's been one of the problems, is administration has sort of said, hey, this RSC, they can work now, they're no longer suspended, but then they've not provided any guidance or any access to the databases they need to begin processing cases. And that's something that the court was very clear about. They should be, they should resume processing, and they should resume access to databases like START that allow them to actually do the work of processing refugees. So hopefully that happens.
Thank you. Yeah, for those of you who may not be familiar, the RSC is the process when a refugee needs to first be processed abroad, and then that's the sending process before the resettlement that many of us are familiar with on the receiving end. But that's critical work. CWS has done the vast majority of processing of individuals coming out of Africa, and so our work there has been incredibly important, and this effort to try to get it properly restarted is really critical, even at a minimum level, to complete those who have already been approved and to process that. Now, our next question is, since we have not seen much, if any, action taken following the court's rulings, what can we do?
It's another great question, and one we keep asking ourselves too. I mean, I think one thing I will say is that it's true. Really, since February, the administration has been under some obligation to resume the program. Now, that obligation has changed based on the Ninth Circuit's sort of clarifications and narrowing of the original preliminary injunction issued by the lower court. It all gets very complicated in legalese, but the fact remains the administration has just clearly not abided by some of these orders. And that's one of the reasons, I mean, we took one of these initial steps. We issued, through and our litigators in the Pasito case, we issued a motion to enforce, which is basically saying the court needs to step in and really require the administration to take action. And through a couple of weeks of ongoing negotiations, that's this framework that came out on Monday is the result of that motion to enforce. And it really provides these very clear step-by-step instructions for the administration to resume processing. Now, if the administration still does not follow those steps, which that remains to be seen, again, the first deadline is this Monday, May 12th, it's coming up soon, then there are some remedies available to the court. There's things like holding the administration in contempt, which courts have been somewhat loath to do. And we have seen when there's very specific requirements, the administration has abided by some of these court orders. For example, in the AIDS vaccine case, that touched on the broader foreign aid freeze and resulted in some funding, including funding for CUS being frozen. We did see ultimately the administration begin to repay some of those payments after the court order and after the courts provided these step-by-step instructions. So that may be an optimistic take. The other thing we can do is raise our voices and take action. One of our key asks for members of Congress, for example, is hold the administration accountable for abiding by these court orders, because again, it's not just about the judiciary. There are other branches that need to hold the administration in check, and there's also the voice of the people.
Yeah, thank you, Danilo. And I want to emphasize that last comment, right? I think CWS is out in the court. We're trying to do this. We need your support. We need you to, and this is about law abiding. Like, we need to abide by our laws. Our laws establish the importance of welcome. Our laws establish that the judiciary balances the power of the executive. This is the kind of stuff that's making many of us anxious about the practices currently. And so the opportunity we have here is to speak out and to encourage and to ask that we follow the processes of our own communities and of our own laws. Any possibility of arrival for those who had an approval letter but don't meet all three categories? For example, didn't have tentative date to flight. So that might be a little bit more detailed. So I don't know if you're able to respond to that one, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't offer guidance on any particular cases. What I'll say is, of course, recognize that what we're talking about with this most recent court order is about a group of 12,000 refugees. There are many others in the pipeline, as Dave mentioned, in RSC Africa, in our pipeline. And Church World Service remains committed to seeing those refugees be resettled and receive the support they need. This is an ongoing court case. We're not going to be done with it just to see these 12,000 folks are resettled. And it's an ongoing story about our country's commitment to welcome. And so I certainly don't want folks to feel like if they don't fit into these narrow categories created by the Ninth Circuit, They're not a part of this case. They're not a part of our work. But we're going to continue to fight for those folks. And again, I can't offer any guidance on particular cases because people might be in different circumstances.
Thank you, Will. For everybody listening, again, your financial support is critically important so we can advance this work together. It's important that we don't get overwhelmed by the legalese, by the complexity of it. This is part of the way that, I think our communities are being really kind of overwhelmed by a lot of confusion, a lot of antics. We need to get clarity. That's part of what Danilo and his team are helping us to do, and the importance of staying in touch with CWS so that we can provide you with the resources that help you stay focused, know what actions to take, and to know that we are doing this in community so we don't have to hold the entire thing, but there are pieces we can pick up and support. Will you send us email information about the walk, all the various things and opportunities? So what is going to be some of the follow-up we're going to be able to offer listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. And others may be able to share even more, but we're definitely committed to sharing to the folks who've attended here, resources that we've discussed today. And I think there will be an email going out shortly after. And then, for those who have signed on to the declaration, the ecumenical declaration, there's regular emails going out and information going out, providing tools to take action. As we head towards World Refugee Day, there's going to be more resources for folks, and want to make sure that everybody has the tools they need to raise their voices. And to share with their communities as well. So certainly we'll be sharing that information.
Yeah, well, thank you. I can tell just from my own experience, the value of the work that Danilo, you are doing, the policy team is doing. The resources the CWS puts out are top notch, whether it is around, understanding the moment we're living with, how to take action. The resource kits are really remarkable. The ease with which you are able to reach out to elected officials. The CWS provides all of these resources to make it easy for us, to make it doable. And so please do take advantage of that. If there's something that you're sitting with that you have not gotten a chance to ask today or get an answer about, feel free to reach out to info@cwsglobal.org. Again, that is info@cwsglobal.org. It's appearing on the screen, and that's a place where just send a question and you'll get routed to the right link, the right place, but also keep an eye out for the materials that will be sent. Thank you, Danilo. Thanks to everyone who's been part of the conversation today. Again, I just want to emphasize how important it is to recognize the quality of folks who are committed to this work, the people across the country, across all kinds of differences. This is a moment we began by inviting us to remember this declaration, right, that calls us to remember a common humanity, the fact that we are all created in the image of God. The term in the tradition for this is imago Dei. Right. It's interesting, right? That last part of the word, which means God, is DEI, is how it's spelled. And so how do we live out into this moment of really recognizing how we can advance the work of our communities, the richness of our society, and provide an alternative vision to a world where all can thrive? So thank you for being part of the conversation today, because that is important. Thank you for signing on to the declaration as a statement of your support of this. And then also through that, being able to have access to the resources we are sending out, for encouraging others to do so, and for supporting this work as well. Reach out with the questions that you have, utilize the materials that we are providing, support the work that we are doing together. And above all, let's just maintain that level of hope and vision in the midst of a challenging time. This is our moment. This is the time for us to live out our faith, to embody love in action, to defend the rights and dignity of those seeking refuge. As 1 John 3:18 reminds us, let us love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. Thank you for being part of the conversation today. We'll end with a message from Rick Santos, the president of CWS, as he signs off about the importance of the declaration. Thank you for being with us, and stay on to listen to Rick's message for us.
I am proud to have signed the Ash Wednesday Ecumenical Declaration, Defending Refuge. I'm proud that Church World Service initiated this with our covenant members to make sure that people understand that defending refugees, defending people who are fleeing for their lives, fleeing violence, fleeing oppression, have a place in this world to go. Church World Service has been resettling refugees for over 80 years. We are one of the 10 U.S. resettlement agencies since the 1980 Refugee Act, and we continue to believe that helping refugees, welcoming our neighbor, welcoming the stranger is an important part of our faith, of our Christian values. And I would just ask that all of you go to your own individual congregations and ask the congregation to sign the declaration, that you as individuals sign the declaration, that we make a statement to those in power. We tell them that our values, what we hold dearly, our faith, we feel is not being represented and that things need to change. So please, again, sign the act as an individual, sign the declaration as your church, and pass it on to somebody else and ask them to sign as well. Thank you.